Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I still remember the smell of wet hay and gasoline that hung around that farmhouse. It's been 15 years, but it comes back to me every time it rains. I was 11 when my brother Travis came to take me for the summer. That's what he told my mom. Mom was working 2 jobs then, one at the diner, one cleaning rooms at the motel down by the highway. She didn't have much choice. She trusted him. She said, "Travis is family, baby. You'll have fun out there, fresh air, no city trouble." If only she knew. The drive out there took almost 3 hours from where we lived in Kentucky. Travis's truck was loud, smelled like smoke and motor oil, and had this big dent on the passenger door. He had a way of talking that made people feel small. He'd joke, but his jokes always had that sharp edge to them. "Don't be looking so nervous, kid," he said, keeping his eyes on the road. "Ain't like I'm taking you to a slaughterhouse." Then he laughed, a dry, short laugh. The farmhouse sat far off the main road, hidden behind rows of half-dead trees. The grass was tall, wild, uncut. It looked peaceful at first glance, but there was something about the silence that didn't feel right. Too quiet. Even the wind seemed to stay away. He showed me around when we got there. There was a barn, an old red one that leaned to the side, and a small shed near the woods. "Don't go messing around out there," he told me, pointing toward the shed. "Why not?" I asked. He just smiled, "'Cause I said so." That night I slept in a small room upstairs with a single bed and a cracked window. The moonlight came through and painted long shadows across the floor. I could hear Travis downstairs moving things around in the kitchen. Something metallic clinked. Then a door creaked open and shut. I told myself it was just him cleaning up. But even back then, I knew better. It started with missing posters. When we'd go into town to buy feed or gas, I'd see them pinned to the wall at the grocery store or taped to the lampposts outside. Kids. Always kids. Smiling faces with words like "missing since June" or "last seen near Willow Park." Travis would glance at them, chew on his toothpick and mutter, "World's a sick place, huh?" I wanted to believe he meant that. He always drove this big white van, said it was for work. But I never saw him do any kind of work. Sometimes he'd leave late at night, come back before sunrise. The van would smell like mud and something else, like rust and sweat. One night, I woke up to the sound of crying, soft at first, then louder. It wasn't Travis. It was coming from outside. I got up, tiptoed down the stairs, and followed the noise to the basement door. It was locked, but the crying was right beneath it. When I leaned close, I heard a voice, a little girl's voice. She said, "Please, I want to go home." I froze. I didn't move until Travis appeared behind me. "What are you doing, kid?" he asked, his voice low, steady. I heard something," I stammered. He just stared at me, then smiled again, that same smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You hear a lot of things in the country. Best not to go poking around." A few days later, he told me to help him with a project. He handed me a shovel. "Dig over there," he said, pointing to a spot behind the barn. I didn't ask why. I just did it. The ground was dry, tough to break. After a while, I was covered in sweat and dirt. "How deep?" I asked. He leaned on the shovel next to me, eyes squinting against the sun. "Deep enough to forget." That night, I couldn't sleep again. The crying came back, only this time it wasn't just one voice. It was 2. And then I heard something that broke me. A boy's voice, about my age, saying, "Please, mister, don't hurt me." I pressed my hands to my ears and prayed. A few days later, Travis left early in the morning, said he had to run an errand. I watched him drive off, the van kicking up a trail of dust behind it. I waited till I couldn't see it anymore, then went to the basement. I found the key under a loose floorboard in the hallway. It wasn't the first time I saw him use it. When I opened that door, the smell hit me like a punch. It smelled like damp dirt, sweat, and fear. Down there, in the dim yellow light of a single bulb, were 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. Their wrists were tied, their faces streaked with tears. When they saw me, the girl whispered, "Please help us." I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I untied them, one by one, hands shaking so bad I could barely manage the knots. "Go out the back door," I whispered. "Run through the woods. Don't stop till you see the highway." They didn't hesitate. The last boy looked at me and said, "Come with us." I shook my head. "He'll find me if I go." "Just run." They ran barefoot into the night. I could hear the twigs snapping under their feet. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But I didn't realize Travis was already home. He'd come back early. He was in the kitchen when he saw them through the window, running, disappearing into the trees. "What the hell?" he barked, grabbing his gun off the counter. He stormed outside, shouting curses. I followed him, heart pounding, hoping to see those kids make it far enough. They did. They got away. He fired once, twice, but the shots echoed into nothing. When he came back, face red with fury, I thought he was going to kill me. But he didn't say a word. He just stared at me with this strange calm, like he'd accepted something. "Don't worry, kid," he said finally. "Plenty more out there." That's when I knew he wasn't going to stop. The next morning, I woke up and he was gone again, but this time there were sirens, loud, getting closer. I ran to the window and saw police cars coming down the dirt road, lights flashing blue and red across the trees. They pulled up in front of the farmhouse, shouting commands. One of them, a tall officer with gray hair, looked at me and said, "Son, are you one of the kids he took?" I couldn't even speak at first. My throat burned. I'm his brother," I whispered. They looked at each other, confused. I told them everything about the kids, about the holes behind the barn. They didn't believe me until I showed them where to dig. When they did, the ground gave way easily. And what they found? I'll never forget their faces when they saw it. I started crying, hard, not just for the kids, but for Travis. For the brother I thought I loved, the man who'd carried me on his shoulders when I was little, who used to sneak me candy at night. The officers took me to the station and later my mom came. When she saw me, she broke down. "Oh, baby," she kept saying, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. They said they found Travis later that night at Mom's house. He'd shown up there, pretending everything was normal, asked if he could stay, just for a few days. Mom said yes, played along, then called Dad. They called the police, and by the time Travis got out of the shower, they were waiting. Travis never once looked at me in court, not once. They said he confessed eventually, told them how he'd been cleaning the world of lost souls. Said he did it for peace. He was sentenced to death. When they told me that, I didn't feel joy. I felt empty. He wrote me one letter from prison, just one. It said, "You did what you had to do, kid. Guess you turned out better than me." I never wrote back. 15 years later, I live far away from that farmhouse. I don't talk about it much. Most people wouldn't believe me anyway. But sometimes, when I drive past an old barn or smell gasoline, I get pulled right back to that place. I still dream about the basement, about the crying. And sometimes I still hear Travis's voice in my head, low, calm, dangerous. "Don't worry, kid. Plenty more out there." Last summer I went back. I don't even know why. Maybe I needed closure. The farmhouse was still standing, but barely. The windows were broken, the paint stripped by time and rain. The barn had collapsed. The air smelled like dust and wildflowers. I stood where the holes used to be. They were all covered now, grass grown over them like nothing ever happened. But I swear to God, when the wind blew, I heard it again. that faint sound of crying, coming from the earth. Maybe it was just the wind, or maybe some things never really go quiet. I never really thought my brother was capable of doing something evil. I mean, you grow up with someone, share the same blood, the same roof, the same damn cereal box fights in the morning, and you think you know them. You think family means safety. But I guess I was wrong. When I look back now, it all started 15 years ago, after our parents passed away. I was barely 11 at the time, and my brother, Lance, was 31. He was the kind of man everyone admired. Handsome, confident, the man with a plan type. He worked construction, had a farmhouse on the outskirts of town, and was always flashing that charming grin that made people trust him instantly. After the funeral, he told my relatives he'd take me in, said he'd raise me right, give me a good life. Mom's sister hesitated, but Lance had a way of convincing people. "He's my little brother," I remember him saying, placing his hand on my shoulder. "He's all I got left. I'll make sure he's taken care of." At 11, I didn't know any better. He seemed like a hero stepping up when nobody else did. When we got to his farmhouse, though, something already felt off. The house itself looked nice from the outside. White porch, wide fields, even a little red barn out back. But inside, it felt hollow. Too quiet. Like the place was trying to hide something. There were locks on every door. Heavy metal latches, some on the outside, and in the basement. That smell. Like damp wood and rusted iron. I told myself it was just the country air. Just my nerves. For the first few months, Lance acted normal enough. He'd take me fishing, make breakfast, even help me with my schoolwork. But there were moments, small ones, that stood out. Like the way he'd disappear at night, or how his mood could flip in an instant. Once, I knocked on his room door after hearing strange noises, and he shouted so loud I froze in place. "You knock one more damn time and I'll make sure you regret it." I didn't knock again. By the time I turned 14, Lance had gotten weirder. He'd started building something behind the barn, said it was a storage shed. When I asked what for, he smiled, too wide, and said, "You'll see soon." That smile. I swear it still haunts me. One night I woke up to the sound of his truck pulling up. I peeked through the window and there he was, dragging something out of the back, something wrapped in a tarp. It was big, heavy. He grunted, stumbling a little. Then he carried it toward the shed. The next morning, he acted like nothing happened. "Sleep good, kiddo?" he asked, flipping pancakes. "Yeah," I lied. But from that day on, I started watching him closer. Years passed. I eventually left that farmhouse when I turned 18, telling Lance I wanted to go to college in town. He didn't argue, just smiled again, that same fake grin, and said, "Do what you gotta do. Just don't forget who raised you." I didn't forget, but I also never forgot what I saw that night. After I left, I tried to move on. New job, new friends, new everything. But every now and then, Lance would call me out of nowhere. "Come visit sometime, lil bro," he'd say. "The farm's lonely without you." And every time, something in his tone felt off. Too rehearsed. Too controlling. I kept my distance until one day, my buddy Chris, who worked part-time with the sheriff's office, mentioned something that made my stomach drop. "Hey," he said one evening at the diner sipping coffee. "You remember that old farmhouse off County Road 19, near the river bend?" "Yeah," I said carefully. "Why?" "Sheriff says there's been a few reports of missing hikers around that area lately. Thought it was wild hogs at first, but the dogs can't find a damn thing." I froze. "You mean near my brother's place?" Chris nodded slowly. "Didn't know you had family out there." "Why?" I didn't answer. I just excused myself and left. A week later, I decided to visit Lance, not to catch up, no. I went there because I had to see for myself. When I pulled up the long dirt road to the farmhouse, everything looked the same. The porch, the barn, even the crooked mailbox with our last name still painted on it. Rowan. but the place felt colder now. Lance came out as soon as he heard the engine. "Well, look who finally remembered me," he laughed, walking over. He looked older, beard unkempt, but those eyes still had that gleam that made my skin crawl. "Been a while," I said. "Damn right it has," he said, clapping my shoulder hard. "Come on in, I'll make some coffee." Inside, the farmhouse was even emptier than before. No photos, no clutter, just bare walls and that same damp smell. As he poured coffee, I glanced out the window and saw the shed. It looked different now, bigger. There was a new padlock on the door and a light on inside. "What's that?" I asked casually. Lance didn't even look. "Storage." "For what?" He smiled again. "You always were curious, huh?" I tried to keep the conversation normal, but I couldn't stop thinking about that night years ago. The tarp, the lock, the smell. Later, when he went to the bathroom, I slipped out the back door and headed straight for the shed. My hands shook as I pulled out the little lockpick set I'd brought. Took me a few tries, but it finally clicked open. Inside, the air hit me like a wall. Rot, metal, and bleach. The walls were lined with shelves, old shoes, torn clothing, a few bags, and at the back, under a work light, was a table with restraints. That's when I saw it. A folder. Inside were photos of missing people, names, dates, even news clippings. I didn't even hear Lance walk up behind me. "You shouldn't have done that, kid," he said quietly. I spun around. He was holding a crowbar, eyes cold as stone. "What the hell is this?" I yelled. "What the hell have you been doing, Lance?" He smirked. "Cleaning up the trash. You'd be surprised how many folks out there don't get missed." "Jesus Christ. Don't take the Lord's name, kid. You ain't innocent either. You broke in here." He swung the crowbar. I barely dodged. It smashed into the table. I stumbled back, grabbed the nearest thing, a wrench, and swung it. It hit his shoulder and he roared like an animal. We fought like demons in that shed. The table flipped, chains clattered, shelves came down. I didn't even think. I just reacted. I hit him again and again, until he stopped moving. I stood there shaking, breathing hard. The light flickered, casting shadows over his still body. And then, I heard a sound. A muffled voice. I turned toward a corner. There was a freezer, locked shut. I forced it open. Inside was a woman, barely alive. She gasped when she saw me. "Please," she whispered, "help me." I lifted her out, shaking uncontrollably. She clung to me, sobbing. I dragged her out of that shed into the cold night air. As I called 911 with trembling hands, I looked back once more. The door hung open, the light still flickering. Lance didn't move, but his eyes were open, staring right at me. The cops came fast. They found evidence linking him to at least 6 missing people. The woman survived. They called me a hero, but I didn't feel like one. I felt dirty, like something inside me broke that night. I moved away not long after, changed my number, started over. But some nights, when it's quiet, I still hear his voice. "You'll see soon." And sometimes when I look in the mirror, I wonder, was I just lucky I caught him in time? Or is there something in our blood that makes us both the same? Because lately, I've been having dreams. Dreams of that shed. Dreams of the cold light. Dreams where I'm the one holding the crowbar. And when I wake up, I'm smiling. I grew up in a small town in Missouri, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, and nothing ever really happened. Or at least, that's what outsiders thought. My name's Kyle, and if you'd asked anyone who knew my family, they'd tell you that my brother Jake was the golden boy, charming, confident, the kind of guy people naturally liked. But behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. Jake was 6 years older than me, and from the time I can remember, I looked up to him. He'd fix my bike, sneak me candy, tell me stories that made me laugh until I cried. But when it was just the two of us, that smile of his, the one that made everyone trust him, would twist into something colder, something that made the hairs on my neck stand up. My mom used to say, "Jake's just protective. That's what big brothers do." But I knew better. When Dad left, Jake took control of the house. He was 20, I was 14, and Mom worked double shifts at the diner to keep the lights on. I remember that first summer after Dad disappeared. Jake started bringing home random stuff, old tools, a baseball glove, sometimes even clothes, and when I'd ask where he got them, he'd just say, "Don't worry about it, lil man. People leave shit lying around, waste not, want not." But it wasn't lying around. Not all of it. One night, I woke up to the sound of his truck pulling into the driveway. It was around 2:30 a.m. I figured he'd been out drinking with his buddies again, but when I looked out the window, I saw him pulling something heavy from the back of the truck. A tarp. He dragged it behind the shed. I remember hearing a metallic clank and a muffled groan that froze me in place. The next morning, Jake was in the kitchen making pancakes like nothing happened. "Sleep good, kid?" he asked, grinning like he hadn't done a damn thing wrong. I wanted to ask him what he'd been doing, but the way he looked at me, it was like his eyes were daring me to question him. So I didn't. Not then. Years passed. I moved out at 18, joined a construction crew, tried to live my own life. But the shadow of Jake never really left. He'd call me sometimes, usually drunk, sometimes crying. Then, there'd be stretches where I didn't hear from him at all. Until one night, about 2 years ago. It was a Friday, raining hard, and I was watching TV when my phone buzzed. "Jake." I almost didn't answer, but something in me, maybe guilt, made me pick up. "Hey bro," his voice slurred through the speaker. "You busy tonight?" "Not really." "Why?" "Got something I need help with." "Nothing big, just something in the garage I can't move alone." That old feeling crawled back into my chest. The same chill I used to get when I was a kid. "Jake, what is it?" He chuckled. "You'll see when you get here." "Don't be a pussy, Kyle. Just come over." When I pulled up to his house, the rain was pounding so hard it blurred everything outside the windshield. The place looked worse than I remembered. Overgrown grass, rusted truck in the drive, windows fogged from the inside. I honked once. No answer. "Jake!" I yelled as I stepped out, my boots sinking into the mud. The front door creaked open, and there he was. Shirtless, pale, his eyes wide like he hadn't slept in days. "Hey, little man," he said, smiling. "Glad you came." I forced a grin. "What's this about?" "Come on inside. I'll show you." The house reeked of something foul, like old meat. I noticed there were sheets hanging over some of the furniture, duct taped to the walls for no reason. Jake led me toward the garage door. He stopped and looked at me. "Before we go in, you gotta promise you won't freak out." My stomach dropped. "Jake, what the hell's in there?" He grinned wider. "Just promise." I didn't answer. I reached for the doorknob. He slapped my hand away, hard. "I said promise." "Fine, I promise," I snapped. He nodded, satisfied. "Good." He pulled the chain that lifted the garage door, and the metal groaned as it rose. The smell hit first. Rot, like something dead had been baking in there for days. My flashlight cut through the darkness, and that's when I saw it. A chair, in the middle of the room, and tied to it, a man, gagged, his head hanging low, his face bruised and bloodied. He was still breathing, barely. "What the hell, Jake?" I shouted, stumbling back. "What did you do?" He laughed. "He broke into Mom's place last week. Tried to take her purse." "You believe that shit?" My heart was pounding so hard I could barely speak. "You don't even live near Mom anymore." Jake's grin faded. He was near her, though. Saw him follow her out of the diner. I had to protect her. "You know how it is, Jake. Untie him. We're calling the cops." Right now he tilted his head, studying me like he was trying to figure out if I was serious. Then his smile crept back. Cops don't care, Kyle. They never did. You think they helped Dad? You think they helped me when he used to? He stopped himself, voice trembling. They don't give a shit about people like us. Jake, this isn't protecting anyone. You're gonna kill him. Jake stared at me. Then, slowly, he walked behind the man and grabbed a knife from the workbench. Then maybe that's what needs to happen. I stepped forward. Jake, don't. I swear to God, I'll... He cut me off, eyes blazing. You'll what? Call the cops? On your own brother? You owe me, Kyle. After everything I've done for you. After everything I protected you from... I didn't ask you to protect me, I shouted. You've been scaring me my whole damn life. For a second I saw it, a flicker of pain in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that smile. That goddamn smile. He turned the knife toward the man in the chair. You don't get it. You never will, I didn't think. I just moved. I grabbed the first thing I could, a wrench from the shelf, and swung. It hit his arm, the knife clattering to the ground. He screamed, charging at me like a bull. We crashed into the tool rack, metal flying everywhere. Stop, Jake, I yelled, trying to push him off. He was stronger than me. Always had been. His hands wrapped around my throat, squeezing, his eyes wild and unfocused. You think you're better than me? He growled. You think you're the good one? My vision blurred. His grip was iron. I felt my legs weaken. So I reached for the floor, found the wrench again, and swung it up, hard. He collapsed. Just like that. No sound. I lay there gasping, staring at him. The rain pounded outside. The man in the chair was still breathing, barely conscious. I called 911, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. When the police came, they found more than just that man. They found photos in Jake's basement, people I'd never seen before. Some missing from nearby towns. Some I recognized from news reports years ago. Jake didn't die that night. He's in a state hospital now. They said he's schizophrenic, that he's been living with delusions for years, that he thought he was protecting people. But sometimes I wonder, because every now and then, I still get those phone calls, late at night, static on the line, then a whisper. Lil man. It's his voice. And I swear, sometimes when I look out my window, I see a truck parked across the street. Old, rusted, headlights off, just sitting there, waiting. I never thought my quiet little job at a 24-hour corner store would ever lead me into something that would change the way I see people forever. I'd been working there for almost 3 years when everything happened. The store sat right across from the back alley of my apartment complex, which was great. I could get there in under a minute if my shift started early, or if I forgot something at home. Back then, I was 31, married, and honestly just trying to get by. My husband, Tyler, worked long hours as a delivery driver, so we barely crossed paths during the week. It wasn't the best neighborhood, but rent was cheap, and the store paid me enough to make things work. You get used to the drunks, the weirdos, the late-night noise. You tell yourself it's just another part of city life. But that summer, everything started to feel off. It was mid-July, blistering hot, the kind of heat that sticks to your skin. I remember because I'd been sweating through my work polo before my shift even started. My co-worker that morning was Haley, my favorite person on the team. She was younger than me, always cracking jokes, always in a good mood. We were restocking drink lids and putting up signs for the weekend sale when the bell over the front door jingled. I didn't even look up at first. Customers came in and out all day. But when Haley said under her breath, check this guy," I glanced over. A man walked in with a boy who looked maybe 8 or 9. The guy was tall, probably around 6 feet, but thin. He had long braids that swung when he walked, dark brown skin, and a heavy trench coat that hung almost to his knees. That coat made no sense. It was 85 degrees outside. "Morning," I greeted with my customer smile. He nodded slightly. His accent was thick, maybe Caribbean. You sell GPS here? I almost laughed. Not really. We've got some cheap phone chargers and earbuds, but no GPS systems. You might want to try the tech store down the street. He smiled, but there was something strange about the way he looked at me. It wasn't friendly or casual. His eyes lingered, too long, too steady, like he was memorizing me. The little boy tugged on his sleeve and said something in another language I didn't recognize. The man answered him quietly, then turned back toward me. You from around here? He asked. I blinked. Yeah, I live close by. Why? You look familiar, he said slowly. Maybe I saw you before. You got beautiful eyes. You do yoga or something? I gave a nervous chuckle. Yeah, a little. He said, smiling wider. I can tell. You got strong legs. Haley looked up from the counter and caught my eye, her expression saying, what the hell? I tried to change the subject. Can I help you find something? He took his time answering. Then he said, I like your tattoos. You got more? I felt my face heat up. Sir, I'm just here to help you shop, not talk about that. He laughed, low and strange. Okay. Don't be mad. I turned away and started fixing the shelves, pretending to stay busy. I could still feel his eyes on me, and every time I glanced his way, he was pretending to browse but not actually picking up anything, just watching. Then I heard it, the click of a phone camera. I spun around. Hey, don't do that. He blinked innocently. What? What you mean? You just took a picture of me. He shrugged, smiling slightly. No picture. You mistake, I'm not stupid, I said sharply. Haley came up beside me, glaring at him. You need to leave, man. You can't do that. He muttered something to the boy, then looked back at me. For a second our eyes met, and I swear to God there was something predatory in that look, something that made my stomach turn. Then he left. I went straight to the office, hands shaking. Haley followed, closing the door behind us. Jesus, that guy was creepy, she said. You okay? I hate this shit, I said. Every damn week it's some dude being weird. We both laughed it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Something about him stuck with me. That night I was closing the store. When we were done counting the register, one of the stock guys handed me an envelope. Some dude asked me to give you this, he said. Said you'd know what it was about. I frowned. What dude? Tall guy. Braids. Had a kid with him earlier. My heart dropped. When did he come in? Like 10 minutes ago. He said not to open it until you got home. I didn't open it right away. I waited until I got home, locked the door, and sat at my kitchen table. Tyler was already asleep in the bedroom. When I finally opened it, my hands started shaking. Inside were printed photos, dozens of them, photos of me, some of me behind the counter, some outside the store, some walking my dog, some even from behind the fence of my backyard. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. I flipped through them faster, my heart pounding harder each time I saw my own face. Then there was a letter, handwritten in shaky cursive. You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I love the way you walk, the way you smile. I could make you happier than your husband. Please give me a chance. Raul. I froze. He'd signed his real name. I called the police that night. They came, took the photos, the letter, the security footage. The next day, the store's manager called me in. They caught the guy, he said. He's claiming it's a misunderstanding. Said he was just trying to get your attention. The police warned him to stay away and banned him from the store. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. About a month later, I was working a Sunday shift again. It was busy, the line wrapping around the counter. I was halfway through my shift when I noticed someone standing by the drinks aisle. He was tall, wearing a trench coat, same braids, same colored stone earring. But his face was different. My stomach dropped. It wasn't him, but he looked enough like him that I froze. His eyes were cold, emotionless. He didn't pick up anything, Didn't move, just stared. I whispered to Haley, "Hey, that guy's freaking me out. Check if he's been here before." She glanced over, frowned, and said, "Nope, never seen him." A few minutes later, the guy was gone. I went to the back to grab some boxes from the stockroom, trying to calm down, but as I passed the small mirror mounted by the supply closet, I caught a reflection that stopped me cold. The same man, Raul, was standing in the back aisle, talking on a phone. His voice was low, urgent, and heavy with that accent. "Yeah, she's here. Just her and another girl. I'll get her when she leaves. It's under control." My blood ran cold. I ducked behind a shelf, trying not to make a sound. My heart was hammering so loud I swore he could hear it. Then, without thinking, I slipped toward the front, keeping my steps silent. I found Haley and grabbed her arm. "He's here," I whispered. "He's talking to someone about getting me. Call the cops." Now she didn't hesitate. She hit 911 right away. We locked the front doors and told the few customers to stay put. Within 5 minutes, police cars surrounded the place. They went in through the back and dragged him out, shouting at him to get down. He didn't even resist. He smiled the whole time. Later, a detective came by to talk to me. His face was serious, his tone quiet. "Miss," he said, "the man we arrested tonight is Raul's brother. They've both been under investigation for months. We believe they're connected to a human trafficking ring operating across 3 states." I stared at him, shaking. "You're serious?" He nodded. "We found evidence linking them to several missing women." "You did the right thing calling us." I couldn't speak. My throat burned. A week later, the detective called again. They'd found another victim, a woman who hadn't been so lucky. She'd been taken, abused, and left for dead in her own apartment. I hung up and cried for a long time that night. Every noise after that made me jump. Every face that lingered too long made my heart race. I stopped walking to work, stopped working late. Tyler begged me to quit, and I finally did. To this day, I still see those eyes in my sleep. That cold stare, that smile when he was being arrested. Sometimes I swear I see that same trench coat in a crowd, and my chest tightens all over again. Because deep down, even though both brothers are serving life sentences now, I can't shake the feeling that someone else is still watching me. I still remember the day the calls began. It's been over 40 years now, but that first one still plays in my head like a warped record. I was sitting in the kitchen of our small house in Fairgrove, Missouri, staring at the steam rising off my coffee cup. It was early January of 1981, a quiet morning after one of the hardest weeks of my life. My daughter Hannah had been missing for 7 days. The police had been doing what they could, or at least that's what they said, but I could tell they were running out of leads. My husband, Robert, was still out scouring old roads, gas stations, even knocking on doors in towns 30 miles away. He couldn't sit still. I, on the other hand, had been glued to the house phone like it was my only lifeline. And then it rang. My grandson, Caleb, was sitting cross-legged on the living room rug, watching cartoons with the sound barely on. When he heard the ring, he turned, hopeful, the way he did every time, as if somehow his mom might be on the other end. I picked up the receiver before the second ring finished. "Hello?" There was a long pause, then a man's voice, deep, grainy, slow. "I have your daughter." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. "What? Who is this?" I whispered, gripping the cord so tight I could feel it cut into my palm. "She's with me. Don't call the cops again, you hear me? You call them, and she dies." I could hear a faint, wet sound in the background, like someone breathing too close to the phone. Then the line went dead. I don't even remember setting the phone down. I just screamed for Robert, though he wasn't home, and Caleb began crying from the other room. That was the first of many calls. Every Wednesday afternoon, like clockwork, that same voice would call. Sometimes he'd say, "She's with me." Sometimes, "I've already killed her." and sometimes he'd whisper, "You'll see me soon." The police tried tracing the calls, but back then, that wasn't so easy. Most of the time he hung up before they could get a fix. They said maybe it was just a sick prank, but I knew it wasn't. A mother always knows. Hannah was 26 when she disappeared. A single mother, hardworking, kind to everyone. She worked 2 jobs in Fairgrove, one at a real estate office and another part-time at the town's diner. She never complained. Her life revolved around Caleb. But there was something else, something we didn't realize until it was too late. My son, Hannah's older brother, Michael, he'd always been different. After our parents died, I took custody of both Hannah and Michael. He was 17 then. She was 12. He was quiet, kept to himself, but he had this strange obsession with his sister. I'd catch him staring at her sometimes, not in a protective way. No, there was something darker there. Once, when Hannah was about 16, I overheard them arguing in the hallway. "Why'd you wear that?" he asked her. "Because I like it," she said, annoyed. "It's too short." "You look like one of those girls from town. Mike, I can wear what I want." He slammed his hand against the wall so hard the picture frame fell. "Don't talk back to me." I'd rushed out of the kitchen then, scolding him, sending him to his room. But the way he looked at her before turning away, it made my stomach twist. Over the years, Michael's behavior got worse. He'd lose jobs, disappear for weeks, then show up again, apologizing, crying, begging for money. Robert always said he wasn't right in the head. I wanted to believe he'd grow out of it. But after Hannah had Caleb, it was like something inside him snapped completely. He started showing up unannounced at her place, sometimes late at night. "She's my sister," he'd tell me when I confronted him. "I just want to make sure she's okay." But Hannah confided in me that he made her uneasy. "He watches me," she whispered one night, crying quietly. "He's not normal anymore, Mom." I told her to change her locks, and she did. But you can't change family. It started with the phone calls. "Is this Hannah Price?" "Yes, who's this?" "I'm your lover." She'd laughed at first, thinking it was a wrong number, but a few days later he called again. "You hung up on me last time." "That wasn't very nice. Listen, whoever you are, stop calling me. I'm not interested. I told you I loved you, Hannah, and you insulted me." I don't take that well. The next morning, she found a dead bird on her car hood. She came over that night shaking, clutching Caleb close. Robert and I told her to report it, and she did. But the police just shrugged. "Could be a prank," they said. A few nights later, she received another call. "Go outside," the voice said. "I left you something, sweetheart." She didn't move. Robert grabbed his flashlight and went out to the driveway. On her windshield was a folded note and a crushed rose. The note read, "You shouldn't have told on me." After that, Robert bought her a small handgun. Hannah didn't want to use it, but she carried it in her purse anyway. May 23rd, 1981. Hannah had taken a co-worker to the hospital after he'd gotten stung by something while cleaning the back of the office. She called me from the waiting room around 7 p.m. "Mom, I'll be home soon. Can you keep Caleb a little longer?" "Of course, honey. Drive safe." That was the last time I ever heard her voice. Her co-workers said they saw her heading toward the parking lot when a car pulled up with its headlights flashing twice. She walked toward it like she recognized whoever was inside. The car door opened, she leaned in, and then it sped off. Nobody saw the license plate. The next morning, her car was still in the lot. Purse gone, gun missing. When the police started their investigation, the calls shifted to me. "You shouldn't have let her walk away that night," the voice said on the second call. "What do you want?" I pleaded. "She's with me now. She belongs to me. Always did." That same night, Robert found our back gate wide open. Caleb's tricycle had been moved from the porch to the yard. I didn't sleep for weeks. Then one evening around midnight, the phone rang again. "She called for you," the voice said. "What?" "She said your name before I made her quiet. I told her she didn't need you anymore." I dropped the receiver. June 10th, 1981. The Fairgrove Chronicle printed an article about Hannah's disappearance. The next day, they got an anonymous call. "I killed her," the man said. "She was my love. My sister, she betrayed me." He hung up. When the police traced the call, it came from an old gas station payphone 2 towns over, the same one Michael used to frequent when he drifted between jobs. They questioned him, of course, but there was no evidence. He denied everything. "You're crazy," he told me when I confronted him. "You're trying to blame your own son for something you don't understand." He left town a week later. Never came back. 4 years passed before they found Hannah, or what was left of her. A construction crew outside Cedar Ridge uncovered a shallow grave. The bones were wrapped in a floral bedsheet, the same pattern Hannah used to have in her old apartment. DNA confirmed what we already knew. I'll never forget the sheriff's face when he told me. He looked like he wanted to cry. They never found Michael either. Some said he ran off to Oklahoma. Others said he ended up in prison under another name. I stopped caring. Robert passed away in 1998. Caleb grew up quiet, careful, the kind of man who double-checks every locked door. He has 2 kids now. I still live in Fairgrove, though I don't recognize the town anymore. Sometimes, late at night, the wind rattles the old phone line outside my window, and for a split second, I swear I can hear it ringing. And I wonder if Michael's still out there somewhere, if he still thinks Hannah is his. I pray God proves him wrong. I always thought family was supposed to be your safest place, but I learned the hard way that blood doesn't always mean safety. It started slow, so slow that I almost didn't notice, and by the time I did, it was too late. I grew up in a small town in Oregon called Ashgrove, a quiet kind of place where everybody knew your name and your business. I was 25 when my mom remarried, about a year after my dad died in a car accident. She'd met Rick, a kind-looking guy with laugh lines and a solid job running a small contracting business. He had a son around my age named Caleb, who had just come back from working in Alaska. I remember the day I met him, October. Gray sky, smell of wet pine through the open window. My mom was cooking chili, humming some old country song. When Caleb walked through the door, she looked almost relieved, like she'd been worried he wouldn't show up. "Caleb, honey, this is my daughter Emma," she said, smiling. He had this half smile, the kind people wear when they're studying you. Not shy, not bold, just watchful. His hair was cut short, his shirt neat, hands rough and scarred like he'd worked hard his whole life. "Hey," he said simply, his voice low and calm. "Good to finally meet you." "You too," I replied. He wasn't what I expected. Not in a bad way, just different. There was something quiet about him, like he was constantly listening to a conversation that no one else could hear. At first, everything seemed fine. Mom was happier than I'd seen her in years. Rick treated her well, and Caleb well. Caleb was polite, a little distant maybe, but respectful. He kept to himself most of the time, staying in the garage or walking down the long dirt road that cut through the woods. I was working nights at a diner back then, trying to save up for nursing school. So I didn't see him much during the day. But when I did, he always asked the same kind of questions about my friends. My shift schedule, if I drove home alone. At first, it just seemed like normal small talk. Then the tone shifted. It was a Tuesday night in November when I came home late from the diner. The rain was coming down hard, and my car headlights cut through the mist as I pulled up the driveway. The house was mostly dark except for the kitchen light. Mom and Rick were asleep. I hung my coat and turned to head upstairs when I noticed Caleb sitting at the table. He was just sitting there. No phone, no book, nothing. A half-empty glass of milk in front of him. "Hey," I said, startled. Didn't know anyone was up. He smiled faintly. Couldn't sleep. You work too late, you know that? Yeah, tell me about it. I laughed, trying to sound casual. You walk to your car alone? He asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. Yeah, usually. There's lights in the parking lot. He nodded, still looking down at his glass. Not safe for a girl like you. I didn't know what to say. He said it softly, no threat, no malice. But something about it sat wrong in my gut. I mumbled a good night and went upstairs. But that night, I couldn't sleep. A few days later, Mom and Rick went on a weekend trip to the coast. Caleb and I were left to keep an eye on the house. She'd made lasagna before leaving, left a sticky note on the fridge with a heart next to my name. Saturday night, I got home around midnight again. The house was dark, except for a soft glow coming from the living room. The TV was on low volume. Caleb was sitting on the couch, staring not at the screen but at something in his hands. I froze when I saw what it was. My hairbrush. He didn't notice me right away. Or maybe he did, and wanted me to think he didn't. My stomach twisted. What are you doing? I asked, my voice thin. He looked up slowly. You left this in the bathroom. I hadn't. I kept it in my room. Oh, I said, not knowing what else to say. Thanks. He smiled that strange half-smile again, set the brush down and stood. You should lock your door, Emma. Lot of weird people out there. I tried to laugh it off. You mean in here? He chuckled softly, like it was a joke only he understood. Wouldn't that be something? Then he walked past me, brushing my shoulder lightly as he did. His touch made my skin crawl. The next morning, I told my mom what happened. She laughed it off. Oh, honey, Caleb's harmless. He's just awkward. He didn't mean anything by it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I started locking my door at night. That's when things got worse. I'd wake up to faint noises in the hallway, soft footsteps, a slow creak near my door. The knob would jiggle once, maybe twice, and then silence. I'd sit up in bed, clutching my phone, waiting for something else. Nothing ever happened, but the sound of that slow turning metal stuck in my mind long after the house went quiet. One night, I decided to stay awake and catch whoever it was. I sat in bed with the lights off, waiting. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard the softest creak, the sound of a foot brushing against wood. My heart pounded as I grabbed my phone, pretending to scroll. The doorknob turned once, slowly, then stopped, and from the other side a voice whispered, "You awake?" It was Caleb. I didn't answer. After a few seconds, the footsteps retreated down the hall. The next morning, he acted like nothing happened. Made coffee, asked if I wanted toast. I felt sick to my stomach. 2 weeks later, I came home early from work. The house was empty. Mom and Rick were at a dinner party. Caleb was supposedly at a friend's. I went upstairs to shower, humming quietly to calm myself down. When I opened my bedroom door, I froze. My desk drawers were open. My clothes moved. And on my pillow was my necklace, one I hadn't seen in months, resting neatly as if placed there with care. My throat tightened. I backed out slowly and dialed my mom. No answer. I grabbed my bag and keys, planning to leave. That's when I heard the front door. Emma? Caleb's voice. I swallowed hard. Hey, you scared me. I thought you were out. He stepped into view, smiling that same calm smile. Forgot my jacket. I could feel his eyes scanning me. Something wrong? He asked. No, I lied. Just tired. He tilted his head. You sure? You look like you've seen a ghost. I forced a laugh. I'm fine. He moved closer. You know, you shouldn't be scared of me. I'm not, I said quickly. His smile faded. Then why do you lock your door at night? My heart stopped. What? He chuckled softly. I heard it, every night, that little click. He mimed, turning a lock. Makes a man feel unwelcome in his own home, you know. I was frozen, gripping my keys like a weapon. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. You think I don't see how you look at me? Like I'm some kind of freak. You don't know me, Emma. I backed away, my hand finding the doorknob behind me. I think I'll go to bed. He stepped aside, that same smirk crawling back onto his face. Sweet dreams. That night, I slept with my light on. When I woke up, my window was open. The latch had been broken. I couldn't take it anymore. I told Mom I wanted to move out. She was upset. Said I was overreacting, that Caleb was just having a hard time adjusting, but I'd already found a small apartment in town. I was leaving Sunday morning. Saturday night, my bags were packed. I went to bed early, locking my door like always. Around 1 a.m., I woke to a faint scraping sound. My heart raced as I looked toward the window. Someone was there. A shadow leaned in through the broken latch, hands gripping the frame. "Caleb," I whispered. He climbed through slowly, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Why are you leaving?" He said softly. "Get out," I said, trembling. "You don't understand. I'm trying to protect you." He stepped closer, eyes glassy, voice calm but trembling underneath. "You think people out there care about you? They don't. You'll get hurt. I'm the only one who sees you. Get out of my room, Caleb," I shouted, backing toward the door. He lunged. I screamed and grabbed the nearest thing, my lamp, and swung. It cracked against his shoulder, and he stumbled. I ran for the hallway, but he caught my arm. "Stop," he yelled. "I'm not gonna hurt you." He pinned me against the wall, his breath hot on my cheek, his face twisted with something like desperation or madness. "I just want you safe," he whispered. "I need him in the stomach, hard." He grunted and let go just long enough for me to run. I bolted downstairs, tears streaming, heart hammering. I made it to the front door, fumbling with the lock, when I felt his hand on my shoulder again. "Emma, please," he said, voice breaking. "Don't make me do this." I twisted free, flung the door open, and ran barefoot into the night. The cold gravel tore at my feet, but I didn't care. I sprinted toward the road, screaming for help. A truck appeared at the bend, our neighbor, Mr. Jensen. I waved frantically, crying out. He stopped, jumped out, saw my face and grabbed his phone. Caleb stopped at the edge of the porch watching. His face was unreadable. When the police arrived, he was gone. They searched the woods for 2 days, found his footprints near the creek, but no sign of him. Mom was hysterical, convinced he'd run away because of guilt, but deep down I knew better. He hadn't run. He was waiting. I moved to Portland a month later, started therapy, changed my number. For a while, it felt like maybe life was starting over. Then, one morning, I found something wedged under my apartment door, a folded piece of paper. In neat handwriting it said, "You forgot your brush again." There was a strand of my hair taped beside the note. I don't use Facebook anymore. I don't post pictures. And every time I walk home at night, I check behind me. Because somewhere out there, Caleb is still watching. Still smiling that quiet, patient smile. And he knows exactly where I live. I grew up in a small town called Willow Creek, tucked deep into the Appalachian foothills of eastern Tennessee. It wasn't the kind of place that showed up on a highway sign, unless you were already passing it. We had one blinking yellow light, 2 diners, a single gas station, and a grocery store that shut down every Sunday after church. Everyone knew everyone and everyone's business. If you sneezed on your porch, someone down the road would say, "Bless you," before you even found a tissue. Life there used to feel peaceful, simple. Summer nights smelled like honeysuckle and diesel. Kids played barefoot in the dirt. Folks left their doors unlocked, and nobody thought twice about it. But all that changed the year my brother came home. His name was Luke Tanner, 3 years older than me. He joined the Army right after high school, said he wanted to see the world, though we all knew he mostly wanted to get out of Willow Creek. My mom said he had wanderer's blood. My dad said he just didn't like to listen to anyone. For a while, we got letters from him. They were short, simple, "Doing good, tell Mom I'm fine." Then the letters stopped. We figured, maybe he got busy, maybe life just got in the way. Until one afternoon, the phone rang. It was the base. Luke had been discharged early. They didn't say much, just used the words medical evaluation and psychological concerns. When he showed up at our door that winter, we barely recognized him. He was thinner, his skin pale, his eyes sharp and restless. He didn't hug Mom, didn't say he missed us, just nodded once and said, "It's quiet here." He moved back into his old room, the one beside mine, but the house never felt the same. He barely ate, barely slept. Sometimes I'd hear him pacing the hallway at 2 a.m., whispering to himself. He'd sit out on the porch for hours, staring into the woods, like he was waiting for something to come out. Mom kept saying it was PTSD. "He just needs time to heal," she told Dad. "You don't come back from war the same." But healing never came. He only got worse. One night, I came downstairs for a drink of water and found him sitting in the dark kitchen, a cigarette burning between his fingers. His eyes looked hollow. "You can't sleep either?" I asked. He didn't move. "You ever notice how loud the silence gets here?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" He flicked ash into an old coffee mug. "Out there in those woods, when everything stops moving, you can hear them whisper." "Them who?" I asked, half joking. He looked up then, his face pale in the dim light. "The ones that live between the trees." I tried to laugh. "You mean animals?" He shook his head slowly. "No, people." Then he got up, walked out the back door barefoot, and disappeared into the dark tree line. I waited, heart thumping, for him to come back. When he did, nearly an hour later, his feet were muddy, his shirt torn, and his eyes, different. "They were close tonight," he whispered before going upstairs. From then on, he stopped pretending to be normal. He carved little wooden figures at the kitchen table. Soldiers, hunters, strange animal shapes. Once, I saw him carving something tied to a chair. When I asked who it was, he smiled. "That one's me." At night, he'd stand out in the yard with a flashlight, scanning the woods, mumbling under his breath. "They're moving again," I heard him say once. "They don't like the lights." The neighbors started talking. Mrs. Henson across the street told Dad she saw Luke standing in her driveway at 3 a.m., staring at her house. When Dad confronted him, Luke just said, "I was making sure they hadn't gotten to her." Then came October 12th, 2007, a night I'll never forget. The air smelled like rain, and my high school team had just lost the homecoming game. I got home late. Mom was asleep. Dad was watching TV. Luke was out back, sitting on the tailgate of his truck, eyes fixed on the woods. "Hey," I said, stepping outside. "You okay?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, "You ever feel like something's using you for a purpose you don't understand?" I blinked. "What?" He turned to me, his voice flat. "They talk to me, Sam." "Who talks to you?" "The ones out there. They said there's rot in this family. Said it's time to cut it out." I tried to stay calm. "Maybe you should come inside, man. It's cold." He smiled faintly. "No. They said it has to be tonight." I didn't understand what he meant, not until I woke up to the sound of screaming. It was Mom. Her voice split the house in half. I jumped out of bed, heart racing, and tore down the hallway. Something crashed in the kitchen, then a man's grunt, followed by a deep, shuddering cry. When I turned the corner, my world froze. Dad was on the floor, blood pooling under his head. Luke stood over him, holding our old hunting knife, the one that used to hang above the fireplace. His shirt was spattered with red. "Luke!" I yelled. "What the hell are you doing?" He looked up, eyes wild. "They said he's not who he looks like." "That's Dad." "He's one of them," Luke hissed. "They're inside him." Mom was pressed against the wall, sobbing. "Luke, please put the knife down. Please, baby." He stepped closer to her. "You don't understand, Ma. They wear people. Like skin." Dad groaned, trying to push himself up. Luke kicked him hard in the ribs. "Stop it!" I screamed, grabbing a pan from the counter. He turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, I saw nothing human in his face. "They said you might fight back," he whispered. "Said you'd try to stop me." He lunged. I swung the pan with everything I had. It hit his shoulder with a crack. sending the knife flying. He stumbled back, dazed. "Mom, run!" I shouted. She bolted for the back door, crying his name. I dragged Dad toward the hallway, my hands slick with blood. Luke staggered upright, eyes blazing. "You can't stop it, Sam. You can't stop what's coming." Then he turned and ran straight out the front door, into the woods. The police found him 2 days later near a creek, sitting in the mud, humming to himself. When the deputies approached, he smiled. "They told me it's done now," he said. "They said you'd come." They took him away in cuffs. He never resisted, just kept humming that same tune. Dad survived, but he was never the same. Head injury, trauma. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive. Mom quit her job at the diner and stopped talking much altogether. Luke was sent to Cumberland State Hospital. The doctors said it was a severe case of paranoid schizophrenia, possibly triggered by combat trauma. They said he'd built an entire belief system around voices in the woods. They said he wasn't evil, just broken. But broken doesn't explain what came later. I left Willow Creek a few years after that. Tried to build a life far from those woods. Got married, had a son, tried to forget. Then last summer, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Samuel Tanner?" a woman's voice asked. "Yeah, who's this?" "This is Dr. Hayes from Cumberland State. I'm calling about your brother." My throat went dry. "What about him?" There was a pause. "He's gone. Escaped during a transfer. 2 staff members were injured. We've alerted local law enforcement. They searched for weeks, found nothing. Mom started getting weird phone calls after that. Static mostly. Then breathing. Once, she swore she heard a whisper. They're in the woods again. 2 months ago, I drove back to Willow Creek. Mom wasn't doing well, her heart was failing. The old house looked just like it always had. Chipped paint, broken porch light, the smell of pine and damp earth. When I walked into her room, she looked small, fragile, but her eyes were clear. "I've been dreaming about Luke," she said. I sat beside her. "It's just dreams, Ma." She shook her head slowly. "He's out there, Sammy. I hear him talking to the trees." I tried to smile. "It's just the wind." "No," she whispered. "He said he's coming home." That night, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked with every gust of wind. Around 2 a.m., I heard gravel crunching outside. Footsteps. I got up and peeked through the blinds. Someone was standing near the tree line. Tall, barefoot, wearing a torn army jacket. My stomach dropped. "Luke," I whispered. He tilted his head, like he heard me, then smiled slow. Wrong. Familiar. I grabbed my phone, no service. I ran to Mom's room. Empty. Her bed was neatly made. The back door was open. The night air hit me like ice. "Mom," I called out. From the woods came a faint sound, not echo, not wind. "Sam." I froze. That voice. It was him. Branches cracked in the dark. I grabbed the flashlight by the door and followed the sound. The beam landed on something hanging from a low branch, a wooden carving. Then another, and another. Dozens of them, swaying softly. Men, soldiers, figures tied to chairs, and one in the middle that looked exactly like me. Footsteps behind me. I turned. A hand clamped over my mouth. Hot breath against my ear. "Shh," he whispered. "They're listening." Luke's voice. He smelled like soil and blood and rain. His eyes glimmered in the light. "They told me the cycle ain't done," he murmured. "Said it's your turn now." "Where's Mom?" I gasped. He smiled. "She's with them." I slammed my elbow into his ribs, broke free, and ran crashing through branches, my lungs burning. Behind me, his voice followed. "You can't run from them, Sam. You're one of us now." I burst through the back door, locked it, called the sheriff from the old landline. Within 15 minutes, sirens filled the night. They searched the woods until sunrise. They found nothing. No Luke, no Mom. Only the carvings. It's been 7 months now. The sheriff still calls once in a while, asking if I've heard anything strange. I always say no, but at night, When the wind slips through the trees behind my house, I hear it whispers, faint but clear. Sometimes it's my name, sometimes it's laughter, sometimes it's the scrape of a knife against wood. Last night, I found something on my porch, a small wooden carving of me holding a knife. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a tight-knit family that ran a small but high-end studio rental business downtown. My parents had started it when I was in high school, and by the time I was in college, I'd taken over part of the day-to-day management, mostly maintenance, payments, and security. Our studio apartments were known for their safety. We had digital door locks, hallway cameras, motion sensors, hell. We even had fingerprint scanners for the main entrance. Back then, that was cutting edge. My dad always said, "If parents can trust you with their daughters, you'll never run out of tenants." And he was right. Most of our renters were young women who'd just moved from rural towns to study or work in the city. Parents trusted us because our building wasn't just secure, it was clean, quiet, and monitored. The rent was steep, but our rooms were always full. That summer, I was back home from Oregon State for break, working full-time at the building to save money for tuition. My days were simple. Clean the hallways, check security footage, change codes for new tenants, fix light bulbs. I liked it, honestly. The quiet hum of the hallway lights, the faint smell of detergent. It all felt routine and safe. But that was before she moved in. Her name was Haley Connors. She was 21, a transfer student from some small town outside Spokane. Short black hair, anxious eyes, always looking behind her shoulder like someone was following her. I remember the first time I met her, she came in with her father, a big man with thick glasses and a stiff handshake. "Is this place really secure?" he asked me while Haley filled out her lease papers. "Yes, sir. 2 camera systems, automatic locks, and we live on site," I said. He seemed satisfied. Haley, though, barely looked at me. Within her first 2 weeks, she asked me no, insisted that I change her digital door code. Not once, but 3 times. Each time she'd say, "Sorry, I think someone might have seen me type it in." I told her there was a manual to change the password herself. "You can just follow the steps. It's easy. It's in the drawer." She shook her head. "I don't want to mess it up. Could you just do it for me, please?" Her voice trembled slightly. I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe she was just the paranoid type. By the second month, things got worse. One evening around 8 p.m., Haley came storming down to the front office, her face red and her eyes wet. My mom and I were doing bookkeeping at the time. "Somebody's been in my room," she yelled. Mom looked up immediately. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Haley was shaking, holding a crumpled piece of paper in her hand. I left this wedged in my door before I went to class. When I came back, it was on the floor inside my room, and my blanket, it was folded differently. "Someone's going in when I'm gone." My mom and I looked at each other. I felt my stomach sink. "Haley, no one here goes into a tenant's room without permission," I said. "I've been on the roof all morning cleaning the gutters. You can ask anyone." She glared at me. "Then who else could it be? You're the only one with the master key card, right?" Her words stung. I could feel my ears burning. "Yes, but I haven't used it. Look, if you want, we can check the hallway footage." She folded her arms. "You said the hallway cameras only cover the front and parking lot, right?" I hesitated. "Yeah." She scoffed. "Convenient." I wanted to snap back, but Mom stepped in. "Haley, honey, I understand you're scared, but maybe you just forgot. It's been a long week. Try to rest, okay?" Haley left, muttering something about how no one believed her. After she left, Mom sighed. "She's nervous. Maybe homesick. Don't take it personally." But I did take it personally. The thought that she could accuse me of sneaking into someone's room, it made me sick. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time I saw her in the hallway, she'd glance at me like I was some creep. I'd catch her door double-locked and sealed with tape, little scribbles of pencil marks around the knob. I knew something was off, but not with me, so I decided to find out what the hell was really happening. I had an old Canon digital camera, barely 2 megapixels, from high school. I hid it inside an empty soda box and placed it near the stairwell on Haley's floor. It wasn't perfect, grainy, low res, no sound, but if anyone entered her floor late at night, I'd know. For 3 nights, nothing. But on the 4th, everything changed. It was a Thursday. I remember because I'd ordered takeout spicy chicken wings and was sitting on the floor of the office, watching an old Lakers game on my phone. Around 9:30 p.m., I heard loud knocking at the main door. When I opened it, 2 uniformed police officers were standing there. "Are you the building manager?" one of them asked. Yeah, is something wrong? "We got a call from one of your tenants, Haley Connors. She's reported a possible break-in." My chest tightened. Oh, for God's sake. They followed me upstairs. When we reached Haley's room, the door was wide open. She was standing in the middle of it, crying, her voice shaking. "Look at it, look." The walls were smeared with glittering silver dust eyeshadow, like someone had exploded a makeup palette across every surface. It shimmered under the ceiling light, coating the doorknob, the walls, even the bathroom tiles. "What the hell?" I muttered. Haley pointed at the door handle. "I covered it with my eyeshadow before leaving for the weekend. I went home to Spokane. I wanted to see if someone touched it, but now look, it's everywhere. Someone broke in and spread it all over." The officers exchanged looks. One of them turned to me. "Sir, do you have access to this room?" "Only with the master key card, but I didn't." They cut me off. "We'll have to check your hands, your clothes, anything that could have the same powder residue." I couldn't believe it. They made me sit down while they took swabs of my keyboard, my tools, even the bathroom faucet. Of course, they found nothing. When they left, my parents looked at me like they didn't know whether to believe me or not. Dad finally said, "Let's just cooperate with the investigation. If you didn't do anything, it'll come out." That night, I sat alone in my room, shaking with frustration. And then I remembered the camera. I dug it out of the soda box, plugged it into my laptop, and scrolled through the footage. At first, nothing. Just empty hallways. But then, around 11:07 p.m. on the second night, someone appeared. A man. He was tall, wearing a hoodie and a cap pulled low. He looked around, checking both directions before pulling a small card from his pocket and swiping Haley's door lock. The red light flashed green, and he slipped inside. My heart dropped. The timestamp was from the night Haley had gone to her friend's place for the weekend. The man stayed inside for about 30 minutes before leaving. When he stepped out, he looked directly into the camera for a split second. The image was blurry, but his face, God, his face looked familiar. He'd been to the building before. I took the footage straight to the police the next morning. When they ran facial recognition, it didn't take long. The man was Haley's older brother, Ryan Connors. Apparently he'd been visiting her occasionally, helping her adjust to the city. But according to text messages they found later, his relationship with Haley was twisted, possessive. He didn't like her living alone, didn't like her going out with friends or talking to guys. For weeks, he'd been sneaking into her room using a copied keycard and moving things around just to scare her. Folding blankets, misplacing objects, setting up little signs to make her think someone else was stalking her. When she started telling him how frightened she was, he played the part of the protective brother, offering her comfort. "You can crash at my place if you're scared," he'd told her. And she did. The night before the glitter incident, she'd gone home to Spokane for a few days. He'd found out she'd set a trap, so he broke in again and spread her makeup all over the place to mock her paranoia. He didn't expect her to call the cops. When the police confronted Ryan, he tried to play it off. "I was just checking on her," he said. But the camera footage, fingerprints, and keycard logs didn't lie. He was arrested for trespassing, property damage, and unlawful entry. Haley left the studio the next week. She didn't even come to pick up her deposit in person. Her mother mailed a thank you note to my parents. It said Haley was taking a break from college, dealing with anxiety and therapy. I never saw her again. Sometimes, I still think about that night, the shimmer of the pearl eyeshadow on the walls, the look on Haley's face when she realized someone had been in her room all along. It wasn't the security system that failed her. It was trust. And I'll never forget the moment I realized the real monsters aren't the strangers we fear, they're the ones who hug us when we're crying. I grew up in the Queens borough of New York City, in a small, cramped apartment with my mom and my older brother, Elliot, the kind of place where the walls were thin. The neighbors argued constantly, and the smell of takeout lingered in the hallway. I was 14 when things started to feel off. Elliot was 20, tall, lean, with these piercing gray eyes that seemed to look through you. People liked him, teachers, neighbors, even strangers on the street, but I always felt uneasy around him. Something about the way he moved, the way he smiled, just didn't sit right. It started one late summer evening. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when I heard him muttering in the kitchen. Not yet, not him, he doesn't know. I froze. Elliot? I called out, my voice shaking a little. He didn't answer. I walked closer, and that's when I saw him. There were scratches on his forearm, faint but jagged, and a small knife lying on the counter. He looked up at me, calm as if nothing was wrong. Relax, it's nothing, he said, and his voice was eerily steady. Just work stuff. I wanted to believe him, so I nodded and walked away, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside him had snapped. Over the next few weeks, small things started happening. I'd wake up to him standing at the foot of my bed, just staring. Elliot, what are you doing? I'd whisper. Just checking, he said, smiling. You sleep so lightly. Thought I'd make sure you're okay. But it wasn't okay. My friends started noticing too. When we walked in the streets near Jackson Heights, Elliot would follow us closely, his eyes scanning every corner, his lips twitching like he was holding back a laugh at some private joke. I remember one night clearly. I was texting my best friend Jordan about a history assignment when Elliot grabbed my phone. What's this? He asked, reading over my shoulder. Nothing. Just homework, I said quickly. He smirked. Homework, huh? He leaned closer, and I could feel his breath on my neck. You don't hide anything from me, right? I nodded, scared, but he just walked away. By October, things escalated. Mom was working late nights at the hospital, so it was just me and Elliot most evenings. One night, I heard strange sounds from the basement, a mixture of scratching, low growls, and what sounded like someone crying. I grabbed a flashlight and went down, my heart hammering. The basement was dark, cramped, and smelled like old paint and wet concrete. And that's when I saw it. There was a small corner, separated by a stack of boxes, and inside it, Elliot had built something. A little shrine, maybe. I couldn't tell. Candles flickered, casting long shadows across the walls. Scrawled on the concrete floor were words in red marker. They won't hurt me. Not him. Not her. I froze. Elliot, what is this? I whispered. He stepped out of the shadows holding a small knife. His eyes were wide, but not angry, curious, like a cat watching a mouse. You don't understand, he said softly. They need to know. They need to see. I ran. I didn't stop until I locked myself in my room, trembling. I texted Jordan, explaining everything. But even then, I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. The next day at school, Elliot was perfectly normal, smiling at teachers, chatting with classmates, joking with friends. He even waved at me in the hallway, pretending nothing had happened. I wanted to tell Mom, but I didn't. Something in me feared what would happen if I did. Over the next few weeks, Elliot's behavior grew darker. He started leaving me notes, sometimes in my locker, sometimes slipped under my bedroom door. They were short, almost playful, but terrifying. Don't tell anyone. I'll be mad. You like your friends? I don't. Play your part, or I'll play mine. And then came the threats that made my blood run cold. Knives drawn in photos, shadows of faces scratched into mirrors with messages like, I see you. One Friday night, my friend Jordan came over. We were playing video games in my room when Elliot appeared in the doorway, completely silent. You two having fun? He asked casually. Jordan froze. I could see it in his eyes. He knew something was wrong. Yeah. I stammered, trying to sound casual. Elliot smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was sharp, jagged. Good. Keep having fun. Until I say otherwise. Then he was gone. By winter, the house felt like a trap. I stopped inviting friends over. I stopped going out. Elliot watched everything. He had a way of knowing where I was, who I was talking to, and what I was doing. Sometimes I'd wake up to my phone vibrating, filled with texts like, "I saw you with him. She's lying. Don't trust her." And then came the knife. I woke one night to find it on my desk, fresh and sharp, with a note. "You should have listened." I called Mom immediately. She came home and confronted him. But he didn't panic. He smiled that same eerie smile and said, "I'm just protecting us." But we both knew. It wasn't protection. It all came to a head one March evening. Mom had gone out for groceries, leaving me alone. Elliot followed me into the basement again. This time, I didn't run. I stood my ground. "Elliot, stop. This isn't normal," I said, voice shaking but loud enough to break through his silence. He tilted his head. "Normal? What is normal? You think the world is safe? You think people are safe? I'm making it safe. For us. For us." "You're scaring me," I shouted. He laughed. Low, quiet, dangerous. "Good. You should be." Then the doorbell rang. It was a neighbor, checking in because Mom hadn't been home. Elliot froze, the spell broken. He dropped the knife and smiled again, pretending like nothing had happened. We never spoke of that night again. Mom decided it was finally time to send Elliot away to a specialized facility. He resisted at first, angry and quiet, but eventually, he left. I didn't see him for years, and even though he's gone, I still feel it, his eyes in the hallway, his shadow in my room. I know that part of him never really left. Sometimes, I still get texts on an unknown number. Just one word: watch.